PEP Radio is a part of the Pennsylvania Equality Project that plays music, news, and weather, actively advocating for the LGBTQ+ and disabled since 2024.
PEP Radio, available on Live 365, Roku, Alexa, and at paequality.com.
Here at Gay SA Radio, we're very happy to welcome the Othering podcast to our airwaves. Catch the show every Thursday at noon CAT, bringing fresh voices and compelling conversations straight to you.
Head over to gsaradio.stream to find out how you can tune in and become part of our family. Don't miss it, only on Gay SA Radio, where you are family.
One man and one woman join forces to rid the world
What are you doing?
of inequality and fascism.
Seriously?
I'm trying I'm trying to do a promo here.
For whom? What are you doing?
Welcome to the Othering Podcast with Mike and Dory.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Pretty good.
All right, today we are talking to Max. Max is a trans non-binary advocate, a late diagnosed autistic, and an ADHDer. They are the founder of Authentic Advocacy, Educate, Include, Empower, where they combine lived experience with their speech-language assistant diploma and a variety of related special interests, including autism, disability advocacy, and communication, to create more inclusive, affirming spaces for neurodivergent people. Max received their autism degree at 24. Diagnosis, not degree, I'm sorry. Their diagnosis at 24 following autistic burnout, and describes how that experience helped them reframe their story in the words of autistic researcher Dr. Jacques Den Houting, not as a failed neurotypical, but as a perfectly good autistic person. For Max, advocacy is personal. It's about giving kids and adults alike the understanding, support, and hope that they themselves needed growing up. Welcome, Max.
Yes,
Great
welcome.
to have you.
Thanks for having me, guys.
It's an honor for us to have you here. And you're like prolific. That's like really awesome, all that you've done. And thank you.
Thank you. That means a lot.
All the advocacy work you do, you put in a lot of other information for us, and it's really great work and definitely needed stuff, especially for the children out there. So it's thank you.
Something I've always been like really passionate about, and just that something that's meant a lot to me since I was a small kid, even seeing those other people in my life who are really strong advocates. And my mom always taught me to be that strong advocate for myself and just mirroring that. So I've been doing it since I was a kid, but really started to get into it the last like 5 or 6 years.
So leading up to your diagnosis at the age of 24, did you kind of know that there was a problem? I know that your family has had a history of autism. So were you kind of aware something was going on? It was just a matter of getting doctors to agree?
Yeah, that was the biggest thing. I started kind of researching. I was interested in speech pathology first. And so I joined a whole bunch of online Facebook groups trying to just like learn more. And I had a family member who was in speech therapy. And so I got to kind of join some of those sessions first. And it was really nice to like see that's what I wanted to do. And in some of those online spaces, I had one of the admins for the groups was late diagnosed autistic. And she often like posted a lot with her own advocacy and that perspective for her within speech and how that looks of being an affirming SLP. And I kept thinking, oh, I'm starting to like really relate to a lot of these traits. And I'd never really fully considered it for myself. It was like something kind of flagged when I was a kid. But I was very clearly ADHD. Just what you think of your typical hyperactive child, never sit still, bouncing off the walls. Yeah, so
Yeah.
it was, I kind of knew before, so I kind of self-diagnosed and self-identified probably about a year before. Kind of as that year went on, I kept doubting myself, kind of that cycle of like, am I just like thinking this is me kind of thing. So yeah, that was kind of the, I guess, progression of the start of it.
I have to admit that I still kind of doubt myself. Like, am
Me
I
too.
like doing this because I'm truly unmasking, or is it just like suggestive? Like somebody suggested this and I read it and I'm like, oh, okay, then I'll just mimic this, or kind of feeling where it's kind of confusing. It's frustrating because you know deep down that you're not faking it. You're not like just coming up with shit to do kind of thing, and that it wasn't because you read it or anything. It was because you saw it and you're just like, I relate to that, but
Yeah,
I still
exactly.
have troubles believing that it's truly me at times, because I guess for me, I had masked for so long that I don't even know who I am technically right now. I'm still
Yeah.
kind of a it's was sprung on me recently because I was talking with my therapist and they said, you know, you seem like you're on the spectrum. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And what is this you mean? My child is, yes, I know my children are, but what, me? And I was like thinking, and then I started thinking back about the fact that my own mom used to say, when you were little, I thought that you were autistic, but because you got, you know, the typical good grades and all that stuff and weren't bouncing off the walls like, you know, some do, I couldn't have possibly had it, is what they told my mom.
Yep.
But when I think back to all the struggles I had, it's kind of validating to know that that's probably what it was and I wasn't broken.
Yeah, I definitely relate to that, especially just because my whole family is neurodivergent. So for a lot of our traits, it's just normal in our family. So even things that like might be flagged by parents who aren't autistic or aren't ADHD, who might be neurotypical, it wasn't a big deal in our family because my mom did that. And my mom was for sure autistic and she self-identified like very late in life. And I look back at my childhood too, and I'm like, oh, because I did line toys up, but I categorized them. And because I was assigned female at birth and raised as a girl, I had more stereotypical girl autism in quotations. Um, and so it really wasn't caught, especially because of the ADHD. And at that time, you could only have, like, you couldn't have a dual diagnosis
Yep.
of what was Asperger's or high functioning autism and ADHD. And I had an ADHD diagnosis, and they said, this is the one impacting you the most. So we can't give you anything else. And it was kind of just never talked about. So I really relate to the feeling like an imposter as I unmask, especially because it is my special interest. And I've been learning so much about autism. And sometimes I'm like, oh, am I just faking this? Or is it truly me? And am I figuring out who I am? And I feel like that's a very common storyline that I
Yes.
hear from a lot of people.
And I kind of feel like it shouldn't be that way. That, for one thing,
Yeah.
I don't understand why just because you have ADHD, you can't possibly have had autism back then. It doesn't make any
Right.
sense to me. If you can have comorbidities with other diseases and syndromes, then why can't you have comorbidities with psychological or
Yeah.
neurological differences?
Yeah, I don't understand that either. And I kind of looked into the history of it, but I can't really explain like why they did that because yeah, it's just strange to me. I'm like, what makes them two separate things, and why can't they co-occur? Like, it doesn't make sense in my brain.
No, I've tried to look it up many times, and it still kind of goes over my head as to why they thought it was separate, because to me it just makes perfect sense. Like I said, if you can have comorbidities with asthma, and or multiple sclerosis has
Yeah.
comorbidities, then why can't you neurologically or psychologically have comorbidities?
Yeah, it doesn't make sense, especially because then even like other learning disabilities, like those will co-occur with both oftentimes.
Yes.
And those were diagnosed together. That was even part of the autism diagnosis at the time, because it was, you had Asperger's, and that was basically autism without a language delay and without intellectual disabilities. And that's what autism was with that language delay. So yeah, it's very interesting that they kept them separate.
And part of me wonders if it has to do with the eugenics of Asperger's. I wonder if it has to do with that, because Asperger's was a little history lesson for everybody, but was a doctor during Hitler's time. And people were named for him for those that he deemed okay enough to be able to function in society, whereas those with full-blown autism, as he put it, would be sent to the gas chambers and murdered, or not necessarily gas chambers. Some of them were unfortunately shot, and it's disgusting to do that to people, but that's kind of how they did that. And I guess it fed into, throughout my childhood, that, well, we got to keep them separate.
Yeah.
And
I would, yep. I would agree.
That's the only thing I could think of, is it had to do with that. And it's bullshit, because we're all worthy. I don't give a shit how much money you can, produce for us. You're still a human first.
Yeah. And it just, like, I've looked very in depth into the history of autism, just because I wanted to know more. And if people asked me questions, I needed to be able to kind of back that up. And honestly, like, the whole history of autism, for the most part, is just filled with deficits and negatives, and, like you said, like, locking people up. And they did tons, like during Nazi Vienna, they did tons of experiments on low functioning autistics, and they were sent to institutions, and, like, it's horrific. And even after that, like, that was kind of the worst, and it was like a genocide basically of autistic and disabled people, not only just them. But yeah, I think that definitely has a huge part in how we perceive autistic people even today. And yeah, I would say, like, even me growing up, I obviously didn't know I was, and I was, quotes, high functioning enough to be able to pass, and had other learning disabilities. So I was kind of given that okay, that, like, I was worthy or valid enough that I was in gen ed. And it was questioned whether or not I should go into special education, but my mom didn't think that it would benefit me, because I just needed to be with peers who were like me, who needed extra support.
Yes.
And that wasn't really that was more gen ed than special ed. But yeah, I find it horrific and also interesting.
I mean, it is. And I 100% agree. I love listening and reading and learning about the history of a lot of things. And it fascinates me, partially because the fact that we could do that to each other, just, like, boggles my mind, that anybody could sit there and say, I want to be cruel to people, and like doing it. And then, of course, there's the other aspect of it, is there's so many people that got, looked over and ignored because they didn't act the typical cishet white little boy, so they can't possibly have the same diagnosis as them. Not even thinking about the fact that AFABs and those who still identify as female, they are going to be different than AMABs, and because we're different, individually, and we've got different hormone levels and all that stuff, and it just seems like, why didn't they take that into consideration? AMABs tend to produce more testosterone than AFABs, and AFABs tend to do, more estrogen. But that's not the monolith, because like in my case, even though I am female, I was born female, I still have higher testosterone levels than most would naturally.
Yeah.
So if we can run the gamut with that, then I would think that it would be natural to think, well, maybe because they don't all come from the exact same gene pool, maybe they might be different.
Yeah, it's so interesting to see that just like within the history that there was that narrow mindset when they first started to realize that this might be a thing. And the only groups that they looked at were autistic boys. And even still, like most of the studies are white autistic boys. And that's, it's interesting because that's why a lot, when Autism Speaks had their puzzle piece logo, it used to be blue. And that represented that it was a boy's condition. And I feel like that narrative, because that population was the first one to be looked at, that's kind of the narrative that everyone stuck with, because it was obviously, like, it's often the most obvious. A lot of boys do have that kind of stereotypical, they're interested in math or trains, and it's things that are slightly abnormal for them. Whereas a lot of, I'll just say, like, girls, AFAB people, even some boys and people assigned male, like fashion or dress up or makeup or music or animals. And that's the special interest, and that's where they have those routines or the stereotyped behaviors and things like that. But it's more culturally acceptable, especially in the West. And so it's just passed and looked over.
Yeah, I mean, I am still obsessed with science. Like, I love it with a passion. And, like, growing up, I didn't think anything of it. I thought it was just normal type of thing to have that favorite subject. And it wasn't, and I got A's easily in that and history because I loved those subjects. And it wasn't that I was bad in math. I just didn't think much of it. I did what I had to do, but it was mostly, it was there, I had to do it, so I'm going to do it.
If you're not interested in it, you're not going to do that well in it.
Right. And I just thought that was the norm, that everybody went through that they had their favorite things. And because, growing up for me, it was taught to us that, well, if you're not super interested in trains, then you're not autistic. And it's like, okay, whatever. And so I just assumed I was the normal neurotypical kid, because I was awkward, and I do still have very big awkward moments, but I just thought, again, it was just, that's kind of life. That's how people are. And finding out so many things that I did growing up, or, being impulsive in some spots, but yet other spots taking forever to decide, wasn't neurotypical. And I hate the fact that it took so long for so many people, especially those assigned female at birth, to discover that we're just as neurodivergent.
Yeah. And I think that's like, I have a lot of trans, non-binary friends, other people assigned female, people with, quotes, atypical presentations of autism, especially when there's other co-occurring things as well. Because I know for even me in a lot of ways, and I would say for a lot of my friends, the ADHD can also overshadow some of those autistic traits.
Yeah.
And especially when you have ADHD and are autistic, your brain is kind of at war
Yes.
with itself. It's like they're almost polar opposites of each other in a lot of ways. And so my need for sameness and routine doesn't necessarily present in the same way as someone who's just autistic and will eat the same meal every single day. I can't do that.
Right.
It bothers me so much, and I need change and novelty. But I have 10 different safe foods that I rotate between, or I'm the one that's in control of those changes. And when I'm not, that's when I shut down, or
Right.
that's when I have meltdowns. And I feel like even that's not really talked about because the diagnostic criteria is pretty limited, which, not that you necessarily want it to be super broad, because it's still a diagnosis and it's still helpful to kind of have that criteria. But yeah, I would totally agree, because so many things were missed for me in those ways, especially because I have a few learning disabilities and I wasn't super good at school because it wasn't my interest and I wasn't playing to my strengths. Because once I went to university and I started to do my speech assistant diploma, and I also have a special needs education certificate, I got honors for my special needs one, which had never happened before. I was like a C student, sometimes B's. There was like a few A's in some classes, but that was never the case for me. So it really wasn't noticed because I didn't have intense special interests like some of my family members obviously did.
Yeah, I can relate to a lot of that. I've had a lot of learning disabilities growing up, and it was never really thought of as much more than just, he'll get through it. I was in the special, it wasn't called special ed, it was the remedial classes is what they called it in my school.
Yeah.
So I went through that, and I didn't ever know I was neurodivergent until recently when my therapist told me at the age of what, like 44, 43. So, I mean, I'm not officially diagnosed, but it's probably there. But I struggled a lot in school. I got the C's, B's, or lower grades. And I struggled a lot, like, with bullying and stuff like that, too, because I wasn't exactly the same as them, or I wasn't as cool as them.
Yeah.
No, you're
and I
cooler.
think that that's a huge one, too.
Yeah.
With, like, you are weird enough to not fit in with, like, typical peers, but you're too weird, to fit in with your typical, but you're not weird enough to fit in with like the special ed classes.
Yes.
Or people who are like more obviously disabled. And so you're in this weird limbo. And my younger sister and I talk about that a lot, because you don't feel like you belong. And it's a very strange feeling because you don't understand. Like, I know for me, I'm aware of social things enough to know that I'm doing it wrong and that I'm being left out, but I don't know why.
Yes.
Right.
And I totally 100% agree with that. I went through that. Like, I wasn't bullied, but I didn't ever feel included.
Yeah.
I always felt like it was more like I was the token friend. Well, see, I'm not racist kind of feeling. And it may not have been that way, but that's kind of how it felt. And I didn't know how to like voice things to ask, what is this kind of relationship? Are we friends? Are we not friends? Am I just there for fun, shits and giggles type of thing? And I was always kind of awkward because girls would come over to my house and we would have sleepovers, and they'd be like, well, why don't you have posters of, the guys that you like?
Yep.
And it's like, I don't like posters that much. And like, you could ask me about, certain stars' lives, and I would be able to recite like their whole biography on some people, but I didn't care enough at the same time to want their picture on my wall. I thought that was weird.
It's so weird.
Because I don't like it when people stare at me, and it feels
I
like
had
that.
I had posters all over my walls.
Yeah, but I couldn't do it. I tried because I thought that's what girls do. And it just, so I tried that, but I always felt like they were watching me as I'm like, moving around in my room, and it just creeped me out. And I know that's totally 100% fucking weird as hell, but that's just how it felt to me. So I would have like pictures of, like little pictures of important people, but that was it. I didn't care to have streamers or anything like that on my walls. I loved painting my walls. My favorite color at that time was pink, and everything was pink. Pink, 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 pink. Now I'm sick of it. But and it's just, and I thought I was trying to be so normal, but I felt so ostracized at the same time. And I just couldn't fit in. I never felt normal. I couldn't fit in with the jocks, even though I did sports. I couldn't fit in with the nerds, even though I got good grades. And, all of those, not that I like using those terms for the groups, but it kind of gives a descriptor.
Yeah.
And I was just friends with everybody.
That was kind of me too. I never felt like I could find a group. I was always kind of my family still calls me it. I'm the chameleon.
Yes, that's what my family calls me.
Yep. I would just fit in wherever I could. And elementary school was pretty okay for me. I had like an okay amount of friends, and was still like, we were all kind of weird because it's like we have like 5 or 6 to 12-year-olds for us, because we go grades 1 to or kindergarten to 6. And we're all kind of weird. Like, that age group is just weird.
Yes.
It's true.
So that was like, I was still kind of normal, and I was quite athletic as a kid, and I was very much a tomboy. So I always fit in more with the boys. And I was stronger and taller and faster than all of them. And I proved that point oftentimes. So I was kind of included. And then junior high hit, and that was like 13 to kind of 14, 15. And that's when it got like really bad for me. And I switched schools halfway through my grade 8 year. And it was really intense. And that's when I really realized, like, nope, I'm weird and I'm different, and I don't really know why. I knew I had ADHD, so that kind of helped things, and I attributed a lot of it to that. But I also knew that there was something else there, even though I didn't really understand what it was. And I never felt how all of the popular, even not popular girls felt. Like, I didn't care about celebrities, really, and being obsessed with certain music artists. I had people who I liked and enjoyed, where I would randomly learn tons of facts about them. And kind of like you, Dory, like, learning their Wikipedia page.
Yes.
Not the same as being a fan, and reciting it is not the same as like being obsessed in the way they were.
Right.
And people clocked you as weird and didn't understand why you were like that. And my interests started to really like move away from what the interests were of people my age. And I didn't get along with the boys anymore, and I didn't get along with the girls. And it was just, a really weird, awkward time.
Mine came early because I decided, for some reason, I don't know why, I guess for shits and giggles, to make it 10 times worse. But I started puberty super early. And hitting puberty early and then having a neurodivergent brain and not knowing it is the worst combination ever.
Yep.
Because not only did I really physically not fit in, because I was like the only developed kid in school when we moved to New Jersey. So it's just like, oh, great. Can't somebody else join me, please? And it was, by the time I hit 6th grade, other girls started developing. But it was awkward. So it was just 10 times more painfully obvious that I'm going to stick out like a sore thumb. And it was painful because I wanted friends, but it was weird. They didn't know how to approach me because I looked different now. I wasn't, the typical 9-year-old. I looked more like an older kid. And so they didn't know how to approach me or be around me and things like that until they started puberty. And
Yeah.
I knew facts about puberty that even teachers didn't know. And it's just like, when I think back, it's like, oh my God, I should have known this. But it didn't dawn on me back then that knew these things that other people didn't. And part of it was like, my mom always would say, well, you were always ready for things before anyone else. You were always curious and you were reading things before, you were like 4. And so I was just absorbing all of these things and I just assumed this is normal.
Yep. And I think that especially when you don't have peers who are going through the same things and you can't really talk to them, you extra think that it's normal, even if, because you're not talking to anyone about your experience. And most people either assume that this is completely, they're the only abnormal ones, or everyone must do this. And I just don't know because I don't talk to them about it. And like, I hit puberty when I was 10 and I was always kind of tall and lean, and I still was. So it was like, I still kind of got through, but I had both of my best friends leave in grades 5 and then 6. So I had no best friends at that point either. And I'm sure that my grade 6, because actually they were my grade 5 and 6 best friend, I'm sure they're also neurodivergent and they came out as non-binary later too. So that was kind of the only person that I could relate to. And then I had no other people. And these aren't really things that you can talk about with other people when, because they just, and even if you do, they're like, what the hell are you talking about?
Yes. And like,
You're weird.
yeah. And I knew that there probably were others that had hit puberty, but it wasn't as noticeable as it was for me because, like, I woke up and I had boobs. And it was kind of like, holy shit, what the hell are these things? And they were big at that time. And so it wasn't like I could hide them very well, no matter what I tried to do. And so, I got picked on for trying to stuff my bra, because of course I want to stick out like a sore thumb when I'm brand new at this school. And because that's the thing that everybody wants to do, is completely be the new girl and have that. I didn't have anybody to talk to about that, and so I couldn't sit there and talk and say, these things are going through my mind. These are feelings I have. And you don't necessarily want to talk to your mom at that time either, because it's mom. And and you definitely don't want to talk to dad, because dad wouldn't understand. Or at least you think he wouldn't. But it's just, you feel so isolated already when you hit puberty. And then when you have those thoughts of, you're different, but you can't put your finger on it. And so I grew up just thinking I was 100% like just crazy, weird, and unworthy of so many things. And and then finding out that it's because I'm neurodivergent, it's just like a weight was lifted.
Yeah,
and
I totally relate.
When did you come out as non-binary? When did that kind of come into play? And did that affect things when you were a kid as well?
I would say yes, when I was a kid. And it's kind of funny because my family both thought that it was completely obvious. And then some of them were also like, huh. But I think that because I really like femme things, and I still do. Like, I love playing dress up. I do love exploring with makeup. But I was a tomboy. I didn't care about having a nice haircut. And I think
that's so me.
Ties in, right?
Yes.
And like, this ties into the social norms and not understanding or caring about that social hierarchy or like what's socially acceptable. And I kind of realized how much that interplayed as a kid, because I wore basketball shorts and t-shirts, and I had very weird hair all the time and didn't care about how I looked. I started to once I got to junior high, and I noticed all of the girls especially were dressing a specific way, but that never really felt comfortable for me. And so it was, yeah, but I was always a tomboy. I didn't have a dad when I was growing up. So my mom was a single mom, and she had lots of chronic illness and disabilities. And I was the tallest and the strongest in the family. And my younger sister and I are only a year apart, but I was the one that kind of took on that role and would help my mom with those things. So it was really that like dual kind of role, which I think still relates to my non-binary identity. And I figured that out kind of at the same time that I started to realize I was autistic. So they kind of happened simultaneously. And it was when I was doing my first special needs certificate, and I was at school, and one of my now really close friends was non-binary. And I just saw how authentically they were living, and it kind of just clicked of like, oh, that's an option. And I think that that's a huge thing, especially for like our generations and even like older generations, kind of, that wasn't a thing
No.
growing up. It was, but like there were weird gender queer kind of people, but you were either a trans guy or a trans girl, and there wasn't anything else really. And so seeing that person for the first time in real life, it kind of clicked. And then I started to realize how that related to being autistic, and they both kind of just collided at the same time, which I think was really helpful for me to realize, even like, oh, my autism plays a significant role in how I perceive gender and my own gender. And I do identify as audi gender. So it's basically autistic and gender. And it's not necessarily a specific type of gender, but it's how you feel when your autism influences your gender. And so I find that because I don't necessarily care or understand about social hierarchies or social norms or things like that, my brain just doesn't get it. That kind of plays into how I feel being non-binary. And I struggled with it for a long time, because when I first came out, I thought that I had to be super mask presenting, and especially in order for people to respect my pronouns. Because if you look like a woman or a girl, people will just automatically gender you one way. Same if you're like assigned male at birth and you really look like a guy, you're more likely to be gendered that way,
Yes.
because that's our society. And so I knew that if I went basically the complete opposite way, that at least if I didn't get they, I would be gendered as he, which felt slightly more comfortable at the time. But I also realized that wasn't authentic fully to who I was. That I am, like, my presentation is very fluid. And sometimes I love wearing crop tops and high-waisted jeans and putting on makeup. And then other times I love just wearing a t-shirt and shorts, starting to be okay with that. And I feel like that's where I've stopped caring about the social norms and just doing what's actually comfortable for me.
And that's the key, is doing what's comfortable and feels authentic to you. Because like when I was growing up, it was, you're a girl, you're a boy.
Yeah.
They're really, and you know, they really hardly ever mentioned trans men. They only talked about trans women, really. And so you didn't even, like, you had an idea, but you didn't really know that there were trans men. And so I just, so, you know, in the 90s, when grunge was getting huge, and it was more ambiguous, a lot more ambiguous than it was in the 80s, because, like, you know, the hair. Everybody had the hair, so you didn't really think about it. But 90s, it was more, everybody wore flannel and jeans and t-shirts. And so for me, it was honestly more comfortable than wearing the skirts and the dresses, because I didn't feel comfortable in them. And I can't wear makeup. I'm allergic to like every type of makeup there is. And so whenever I tried to, be the girly girl and wear makeup, I'd end up like scratching it off anyway. And then growing up, I never cared necessarily about my hair, because I just figured, put it in a ponytail. You see if you like it, great. If you don't, that's on you. That's not my fault, and that's not my problem. I don't feel like getting up at 2 a.m. to do my hair, type of thing. Like, some girls that I went to school with would be up at like 6 a.m.
I know.
And I was just like, you're lucky I'm out of bed.
Yep.
And you're really lucky I even thought to put on deodorant. So, that's the kind of teenager I was just, here I am. If you like it, great. You don't like it, great. And it's not to say it didn't sting. It stung a lot, because I wanted to be accepted for who I was, but I didn't know how to navigate that very well, because again, nobody talked about, there's options of describing who you are. I didn't know about fluidity and things like that, because that was never talked about when I was a teenager. And it was just, you're either a tomboy or you're, what was it for guys? I can't remember the term for guys, but it was just, you're effeminate kind of thing. And so there was no in between. There was no differences mostly. And, everybody at that time, I think, was still so afraid of society that we didn't know we could even branch out.
Yeah, I would agree. And even like, I went to, my first junior high, so I would have been 12, 13 to, 12, 13, not quite 14 when I switched. And my first one was a fully arts-based school. And there was like a lot of very interesting types of people there.
Yes.
So it definitely was a little bit more like expansive, but everyone still fit into those neat boxes. And I never did, especially once I got to that age. And we're all going through puberty. No one likes really that age.
Right.
And your body starts to feel awkward. You have hormones now like racing through your brain. Your brain is actually changing.
Yeah.
Your prefrontal cortex is changing. And everyone is going through that at the same time. But I still felt like I was doing it wrong. And I tried so hard to be who I was, but I was so used to masking at that point and just being a social chameleon and just fitting in with whoever I could, that I really didn't know who I was. So I got in with the wrong types of people, and I did the wrong types of things because I was just trying to be accepted, and those were the kids that were accepting me.
Right.
And I know that like really negatively impacted me. And I think that it did in some ways help me to realize like that's not who I am. And it kind of did help with my identity later on. It took a long time. Like high school was a little bit better. For us here, it's grade 10 to 12. So it's like 15 to 18. And that's when I like started to feel a little bit more sure of myself. But it wasn't until way after high school that I realized it. And I was still kind of weird. And I never wanted also to like get up at 6 o'clock in the morning to put on makeup. And I would have had to get up earlier because it took so long for me to get to my junior high school. So I would have had to be up at 4. And I was always like, what the hell? Why are you guys wanting to be up? And I still feel that way.
I do too.
I'm like, oh, no. Like sometimes I will put my eyebrows on because I have very light eyebrows, and most of the time, like, you can't really see them. So like I'll maybe do that. I have to do my hair because I have very fine, thin hair, and as soon as I sleep on it, it's like standing straight up.
I was
But it
called
just-
Medusa for that growing up.
Yeah.
I own that because I did look like her. My hair was everywhere when I was a little kid, and that was the fun part. Honestly, like listening to you talk about all of these things, I feel like I am thinking back of all of the stages that I went through. In kindergarten, you're right. Like you don't think about those things because everybody's awkward, everybody's weird because this is the first time we're seeing other people our age, and it's like, ooh, child. I'm child. Let's be child together, kind of thing. And then you don't really hit, like if you are in the normal range of hitting puberty, everybody's going through it at the exact same time. So, you know, 1 second you're pissed, the next second you're happy, happier than you could ever think possible. And then the next second you're like crying your tears out. And, you know, it could be over because you tripped on a leaf. And, it's just, so you got hormones going over, and then hormones also telling you, well, you're supposed to like this type of person, or no, maybe not that type of person, maybe this type of person. Oh, let's be friends with them. And you're just like jumping all over the place already. And then when your brain's like, yeah, this feels good, let's keep jumping everywhere. And I think that's kind of when it really started to show for me was high school, when just my hormones were like at peak, and I was doing things that I shouldn't have done, but it was like, I felt like, because even though my age was 14, I felt like I was in my 20s, because I had to grow up faster, or at least it felt like I did. I needed to. Partially because, you know, I was babysitting my brothers a lot and such, but when you're neurodivergent, and I didn't realize this until, you know, recently, but when you're neurodivergent, you have a tendency to age faster because you're not the typical person. So you see things and analyze things faster and at an earlier age than most other people. So then you kind of age your brain faster than other people. And so you get ready for things that you're physically not ready for.
Yep. And I would say it's the same for me too.
And it's not that I regret having done them, because, I mean, to an extent I do, but for the most part I don't, because it made me who I am. And it made me realize that just because somebody else says you should do it, or somebody else is doing it, doesn't mean you should. And so, yes, I was on the luckier end that I didn't do extremely harmful things, but I learned from it. And now that I understand why I acted the way I did and reacted the way I did, it makes it so much easier to kind of, I guess you could say, swallow that the horrors of growing up.
My schooling was so different than what you guys explained. I went to an all-boys Catholic high school. So you're either a guy or you were gay. There was no in between. There was nothing else. And the remedial class wasn't people that actually had disabilities or learning disabilities. It was people who went out and did drugs and partied on the weekends and didn't give a shit about school, so they didn't try, so they didn't get good grades. So me being in the remedial classes, not as that kind of person, as a more introverted, just quiet, shy person, I didn't fit in at all with them, but it just, I'm not sure where I would have fit in, to be honest. I was a little awkward back then, but it was just very different than what you guys explained. And
school for me was literally Degrassi. That was like, I didn't realize at how much Degrassi was so rooted in realism when I was in elementary school, when I started first watching the original Degrassi, until I actually got to middle school and high school, and I was just like, oh wow, this really is like Degrassi. Wow. Yeah.
I
Okay.
guess could have been worse. Could have been like Grease singing in the hallways.
There is nothing wrong with singing in the hallways. I would have happily done that. I would have
Anyway.
also been ostracized even more so, but it would have been awesome if we were singing and dancing in the hallways. I would have loved that. I honestly thought that's what high school was.
Me too. Thanks to High School Musical for me. That was like right before. And that and then I went to an art school for junior high. So I was like kind of expecting it for there, but that also
Yeah,
never
I was
happened
I was
either.
really depressed because like I loved the arts and I was in music and theater and nobody did that and I was just like, wait a minute, what is this? Where are you weird people? You're supposed to be obnoxiously weird and have different colored hair and all. That's what I was going in thinking, that we'd skip down the hallways and we would just be singing and dancing. And I know this sounds totally awkward and weird to other people, but that's just what I thought. And I was
That would
hoping
have
it
been-
was.
That would have been so awful.
Well, yeah, if you can't sing or dance.
Yeah, I can't. But I think I still would have been like, wow, this is kind of cool because everyone would be weird.
Yes.
And everyone was weird, but not the type of weird that I was. Or there was a few people who were, but they were also left out and we might not have just like clicked or jived with each other. So we never hung out. And yeah, that's kind of how I felt. High school was a little bit more normal, but I also feel like it was because I started to conform a lot more in order to fit in.
Yes.
And that was like, I was doing less things that were harmful to myself, but I was still masking heavily, which is also harmful. But I never knew how to fit in. And there's a lyric in a song from Citizen Soldier, and it's the song Who I Am. And it says that every day is a punishment for being human, but the wrong kind.
Yes.
And I feel like, because everyone talks about being neurodivergent and feeling like an alien, and I'm sure that there's lots of people who do feel like that in certain contexts. I do. But I also feel like I'm human, but the wrong kind.
Yes.
And it just, that line always like hits me really hard because I didn't feel super weird like some of the other kids who are more obviously disabled. So it was just, that awkward limbo. And then school wasn't how I thought that it was going to be. And junior high wasn't how I thought that it was going to be. And so it was kind of a shock because I thought that it was going to be like what was on TV. But I'm in Canada. And so our education system is different than the US, and that was a lot of what I saw portrayed on TV.
Right.
And so
ironically, I saw a lot of Canadian and British shows growing up, so I assumed it was like that. And then when I got there, it was just like, what the fuck? I was lied to. And it's just, but I hate saying this, but again, I'm glad that I am able to talk to people that have these similar experiences because I felt so alone
yeah.
and just so awkward and so just, I was there but I didn't feel like I worked anywhere. Like nothing seemed to fit me right. And more than just, clothing, like I didn't care about labels. I wasn't going to go for Prada, partially because it was just fucking expensive. But it just didn't make sense to me when I could buy the same looking shit for like a quarter of the price and get more. So why am I going to spend $200 for that when you could get, especially back then in the 90s, the same quality for a much cheaper price. And it was just, I felt like my brain wasn't right because I felt like I was an 80-year-old woman sometimes stuck in this child's body, and that I had lived, but I hadn't lived. And so it was just like this dichotomy going on in my head of you're old, no, you're young, or, you've lived, you haven't lived, and you're supposed to be doing all of these things at certain ages, and I couldn't do them
Yeah.
because it just didn't feel right. And I wanted to do it when it felt right to me.
Yeah.
And I was either too young, like, I was ready to drive at the age of 5. But I'm positive nobody was going to let me do that. And it was those types of things. Or, like, for instance, and I've said this before, I had sex way too early.
Yeah, me too.
Way too early. But at the time, I thought I was ready for it because my brain just kept saying, you're older, you're older, you're older.
And society says the younger you do it, the cooler you are.
That too. And, you're supposed to graduate high school as a non-virgin type of thing, is how every decade has ever portrayed it. You got Porky's, Revenge of the Nerds, all of those movies, they all talk about you gotta get rid of that pesky little virginity. And so I did, thinking I was ready for it, and I did, do it right. I wore well, I didn't wear it, but he wore a condom, and I protected myself because I knew, the repercussions of having unprotected sex and everything, and I understood those things because my brain was older than my body. And even though my body looked older, because technically I was way more developed than I should have been at the age of 14, it was just, so I did it. And even though I don't fully regret it, the only reason why I kind of do is just because I was too young. But at the same time, I don't regret it because it told me what I like. It told me what I don't like. And it kind of opened my eyes to, it doesn't, people are going to say things about you. And it's just like, okay, whatever. Let them.
Yeah.
I have to let them. And I went through the rest of my school years knowing that people thought I was a whore. And honestly, it bothered me, but it didn't. Because it was just like, but I know the truth. And so I just went about my day. And it stung, but it didn't. But I'm happy to be open if it means that somebody else can understand that you don't have to do that just because somebody says, well, you're supposed to. And look at all the society, the magazines and everything saying, this is how you're supposed to be. Be who you feel is right.
We need to start wrapping it up.
Well, I don't want to.
Yeah, I know.
I am having an awesome time talking with them.
I agree. But before we go, I did want to talk about your business.
Yes.
Yeah.
Please tell us a little more about it and say how we can find you and all of that stuff.
Yeah, so it's something that I'm slowly kind of just growing kind of as I want to, just because I'm working as a speech assistant, and that's like I would love to go into being an SLP, but that's going to be a few years down the line and I have to go back and do more school. So that's kind of something I'm hoping to grow more at the same time. But I wanted to start it now just because autism is my special interest and this is my special interest. And it's kind of a way for me to be able to share that and to compile the 750 resources that I have saved and just kind of like a low pressure way for me to do that and to start to put myself out there, because I find it sometimes really challenging, and even just like the demand of keeping up with being on social media and like it's hard because you have to market yourself, and I'm not quite there yet, but I'm okay with that. And so kind of just slowly, I also want to be a good advocate. And so for me, that also means learning from tons of marginalized people, especially because I'm still privileged as a white person who can pass really either gender when I want to. And I want to make sure that when I am advocating, that it does come from multiple perspectives. And so that's also why I'm not jumping into just like sharing tons of things and advocating, because I want to make sure that I'm learning about that. But it's something that I'm hoping that I'll have more capacity to slowly start adding things on. But I am kind of on Instagram and Facebook. I haven't posted in a while because I took a break because I was off for 2 months from work for the summer. But yeah, it's authentic_advocacy it's just Authentic Advocacy for Facebook. And I do have a website. It's the same, AuthenticAdvocacy.ca. I'm currently rebuilding my website, so there's not much on there right now. It's under construction. But that's kind of my hope, is to just be that voice and to slowly start to put that out at a pace that feels authentic to me. So it's not rushing those things just because I need to get stuff out there.
That's the best way to do it. Take your time, do what's right for you.
Yeah, because you don't want to burn yourself out, which is, a huge thing, especially as neurodivergent people. We tend to, when we get into something, we tend to do it where we forget that you're supposed to breathe. Yeah. And so, you burn yourself out.
I do that. I get excited about an idea and I go all in real quick, and it fails real fast because of that.
Yeah, and I've done it when I went for my doctorate. Holy shit, I went, head in first in everything, and now it's just like looking at computers or books. I just want to puke because I am still sick of them at this moment. And so take your time, definitely. And we're all in this together, so we're all gonna, the beauty of this all is learning. I'm still making mistakes because I have to still learn these things, and I want to use the privilege that I do have as a female, and to protect those that aren't necessarily the same as me, and be able to show them that they're worthy and that they're just as beautiful as anybody else. I don't care what you go by. I don't care what you look like. If you're a good person, let's be good people together and share everything. And I am going to fuck up, and I apologize already, because I'm human. But that's also how we all learn, is by screwing up sometimes, and taking that and saying, you know what, I did fuck up. Holy shit. And then going from there and being able to still show up and say, we still have to learn. There's so much to learn, and we can't learn it all at one moment. But we're trying, and we want to make the world a better place, because there's way too much shit that is shit.
And not enough time.
Yes, and not enough time, definitely.
In other words, it's time to go.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Sorry. I would love to talk longer, but we've got rules.
Yes.
So thank you so much, Max.
It's
been an honor and a pleasure.
Thank you guys so much for having me. It was wonderful.
Anytime, and please, if you've got updates or anything, let us know. We would love to have you back and talk some more, especially for the fact that you're like the second person that has gotten Mike to say more than 2 paragraphs. So
Did I?
Yes.
I didn't feel like I talked much.
You did. Holy shit, you talked.
All right. All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
If you've made it this far, thank you so much for listening. Please leave a rating for us wherever you listen. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok.
Othering Podcast is brought to you by Loudcore Productions in conjunction with your support. Your host, Mike and Dory Morris, graphics by Joshua Morris, and join us next week on the Othering Podcast.